Welcome to Story of the Day for Year 3 to Year 6, and we are returning to David Walliams' Grandpa's Great Escape and Chapter 18, Jiggery Pokery. And we wonder if Jack is going to find his grandpa. Day trips were something of a rarity at Jack's school. After a boy had slid down the Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton at the National History Museum on his bottom, the headmaster had banned all trips until further notice. It was only one of the long lists of misdeeds committed by pupils at Jack's school over the years. Most of them had now entered into a school legend. At the zoo, a girl leapt over the wall at the penguin enclosure. She thought that by tugging her pullover over her head and waddling and catching fish in her mouth, she could pass off as a penguin. A trip to Doctor Who exhibition that ended up in chaos when a number of boys stole Cybermen and Dalek costumes and pretended that there was an alien invasion on Earth. One Christmas, on a school outing to see the local pantomime, two pupils stole the pantomime horse costume. They were found out when, several months later, they attempted to enter the Grand National. An excursion to an ancient fort took an unfortunate turn when a teacher was fired out of a cannon and later found up a tree 2 miles away. And out into HMS Victory, a group of boys pulled up the anchor and set sail. They hoisted a skull and crossbones flag and declared that they were pirates. After several months at sea, the boys were apprehended by the Royal Navy aircraft carrier. A day trip to the local farm ended in disaster when the geography teacher were herded into sheep dip and all his hair sheared off. It was slightly preferable to the previous year when the pupils had attached him to the milking machine. At the National Gallery, a wall scrawled "Gaz was 'ere" in black marker pen on a priceless Turner masterpiece, and at first he denied it before being reminded that he was the only boy in school called Gaz. And out into the Bank of England ended up in disgrace for the school when they realised that £1 million had gone missing. The maths teacher, Mr. Filch, is still in prison for the role in the robbery. On a visit to the local fire station, the fire chief regretted letting loose the children with one of the hoses. A teacher was propelled into the air by the spray and kept up there for an hour until the water ran out. The school had been banned forever from Madame Tussauds waxworks in London when a couple of boys made off with a replica of Mrs. Thatcher, and the next day they wheeled the waxwork around the school on a skateboard, pretending the Prime Minister was on a visit. Despite these long lists of offences, Miss Verity petitioned the headmaster to lift the ban. Eventually, she was granted permission to take her history class to visit the Imperial War Museum in London. Miss Verity was well known for being the strictest teacher in the school, and the headmaster was sure there would be no funny business on her watch. Jack had been so distracted by his grandfather being missing, he had forgotten about the trip. First thing in the morning, and with his head elsewhere, the boy boarded the coach. Needless to say, before the coach had even left the playground, all the kids scoffed the entire contents of their packed lunchboxes, the greedy little tykes. Returning to the Imperial War Museum was bittersweet for the boy. Jack had visited it so many times with Grandpa, it was like a second home to them. Of course, this was when his grandfather still knew he was his grandfather. As the coach pulled up outside, Jack recognised the museum at once. It was an impressive building, with Roman-style columns at the front, a green dome on the roof, and two naval cannons pointing proudly aloft in the courtyard. The trip was nearly cancelled before anyone had even got off the coach. Two boys in the back seat had pushed their bottoms up against the window to moon some elderly Japanese tourists. After Miss Verity gave them both life sentences in detention, she made a speech to all the children on the coach. "Now listen up," she shouted over the excited hum. The children were buzzing, having wolfed down the cakes and chocolate bars in their lunchboxes. They were far too hyper to be quiet. "I said listen up," she bellowed, and there was silence. "Every single one of you will be on your best behaviour today. You are a walking advertisement for the school. If there is even a hint of jiggery pokery, monkey business, or shenanigans of any kinds, we're all getting straight back on the coach." Like all the other kids, Jack had no idea what jiggery pokery meant exactly, but he imagined it might include sliding down a priceless dinosaur skeleton on your bottom. Now, here are your worksheets, announced Miss Verity, handing out bundles of A4 paper. There was an audible groan from the kids, who were looking forward to the day trip being something of a DOS. There's even a sheet for you, she said, as she handed one to the baffled-looking coach driver. What am I looking for today? Yes, that's right. The 3 Fs. Facts, facts, facts. Jack scanned his worksheets. There were hundreds of questions, all dealing with historical details, dates, names, places. Jack and his classmates were going to have no time to marvel at the exhibits. Instead, they'd have to spend the entire time reading every sign on every wall and jotting down every last fact, fact, fact. The Imperial War Museum was full from floor to ceiling with tanks and weaponry in uniform, all from past and present. Jack's favourite part of the room was the Great Room, where the planes hung from the ceiling. It had inspired him to display his model aeroplanes in his bedroom in the same way. Have any of you been to the Imperial War Museum? It might be somewhere that you'd like to go if you ask your parents when we're able to travel again. The museum had the most remarkable collection of fighter planes. There was a World War I biplane, a Luftwaffe Wolf, and an American Mustang. However, the pride of place was given to the most legendary plane of them all, the Spitfire. On seeing her again, Jack's heart began to sing. Somehow she made the boy feel so close to his grandpa again. Chapter 19, Birds of Prey. Most of the kids from Jack's school wanted to race through the Imperial War Museum as fast as they could. Their plan was to head straight to the gift shop and spend their pocket money on something completely unrelated to the exhibits, like a smelly rubber in the shape of an ice cream that they could sniff all the way home. All Jack wanted to do was stare at the Spitfire. The machine always had this pull on him. Today the pull seemed even stronger than ever. The Spitfire had been built to bring death and destruction, but she was also a thing of great beauty. Seeing her again, Jack understood why this particular fighter plane, above all the others, had entered into legend. If only he could take her up, up, up and away, he muttered to himself. It seemed a shame that his great warbird, was gathering dust in the museum when she should be zooming through the sky. From every angle, the Spitfire was stunning. Looking at her from below, Jack noticed how her underneath was as smooth and as pale as the underside of a killer whale. The wings appeared as strong and as powerful, like a bird of prey. Jack's most favourite part of all was the wooden propeller, sat on the nose of the plane. It looked more like a military moustache. It was as if the Spitfire wasn't a machine at all, but a person. In this tall display room, there were flights of steps that led to a raised walkway. This gave the visitors a better look at all the different planes dangling from the ceiling. But when Jack went up there to study the Spitfire further, he noticed something very curious. The perspex bubble that sat atop of the Spitfire had steamed up. There had to be something heating it up from inside. Yet more curious was the sound coming from the cockpit. It was the sound of snoring. Someone must be asleep in the Spitfire. I'm going to stop there, and Monday we'll pick up on chapter 20. I wonder who the snoring might be.